All right. Welcome to the second episode of the iSport Report podcast. I hope we didn't disappoint too much with our first one, but we probably did. As of the time we're recording, it's Saturday night, and I hope all of you had a good Thanksgiving. Noah, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Nah.
Why not?
Yeah.
My goodness. If you didn't know already, I'm Brandon. And as we mentioned last episode, we are sponsored by Boom Sports, and we are also being sponsored by Doberman 300. Those are their iFunny names. Again, thanks for tuning in. This episode, we have the regular prediction segment that we had last week. Also, we'll be doing some news from around the NFL and a little news segment that we're calling Brandon's Brainwashing, but we'll get to that a little later. And if you haven't already and you're listening, please sub to our iFunny page and our YouTube page and follow us on Twitter. We're also accepting mailbag questions. We're hoping to get a mailbag episode here sometime in the future. But with that, why don't we jump right in? Noah, you said you watched more Thanksgiving football than I did. You said you watched the Vikings-Lions game. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch. So break it down for me.
Well, the Vikings looked horrible again, and I don't see them making.
Okay. Wait. It was a 3-point game.
Okay, but they played the Lions, and I don't see much in the Lions.
I mean, the Lions aren't that bad. I mean, they got Stafford.
I
he's been
know,
pretty
but
clutch this year.
Vikings were like Super Bowl favorites coming in.
Well,
Game.
that's not realistic anymore.
Anymore. No.
Well, we'll get to a little bit more on the Vikings later, but the Cowboys also beat the Redskins on Thanksgiving. They seem to be the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl now. What do you think their chances are doing that?
Cowboys?
Yeah.
I think they have a good shot, but I don't know. I think they'll probably get there.
See, I'm a little bit opposite. This is a hot take, but not hot take at the same time. I think they're a little bit this year's Panthers. I mean, they've benefited from a pretty easy schedule so far. I mean, granted, they've taken care of their business, and I mean, I think they still have a good shot to win the Super Bowl, but I feel like they're going on a path right now where people are going to make them out to be like, they're the best team, head shoulders above everyone else in the NFL, and I don't think that's true. I think there's a handful of teams like Seahawks, Patriots. Maybe you'd throw the Raiders in there, Broncos. I don't know. I mean, probably them 4 or 5 teams all have a pretty equal shot to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've said from the beginning that the Cowboys, I think, are overrated. But all those teams are from the AFC. And so I think the Cowboys
aren't.
Well, I don't think the Seahawks are.
And the Seahawks, I think it's not to be underestimated that they're a more veteran team than the Cowboys, and not that Dak and Zeke would be able to. Go ahead.
In my opinion, I think the AFC teams, the elite of the AFC, are a lot better than the Cowboys. I think
that might be, it's a little bit hard to compare, but you could be right. I don't know.
I mean, the Cowboys are a great team, but I don't see them winning the Super Bowl. I do think they'll get there, though.
Yeah, I hope they lose in the first round. I'm not a Cowboys fan. Also on Thanksgiving, the Steelers beat the Colts, but who really cares about that? They're 2 pretty mediocre teams. But the one thing that I take great delight in talking about is this demise of the Packers. I mean, before the season, they were huge contenders for the Super Bowl, and they've just fallen off the table. Well, what happened, Noah? Do you have any ideas what happened?
Well, when your defense is that bad, it's not easy to win games, and with whatever's going on in Rodgers' personal life, that's obviously not helping either.
Yeah, that's probably not. I think it's just that Green Bay is a terrible city. It's not a good atmosphere for the team to be around, and you can see that kind of bleeding into their players. They say Rodgers is kind of just a cocky jerk, um, so I think that's why. No, I'm just in all seriousness. A little bit of what's happening to the Packers is the same that's happening to the Vikings. Their secondary was pretty weak to begin the year, and it got injured a lot. So now it's really bad, and that's a little bit what happened to the Vikings on their offensive line. So I mean, I think they're in big, big, big trouble throughout the rest of the season. With that, let's talk a little bit about my team. Do you think the Vikings are out of luck on the playoffs yet? Or do you
Well,
think they still have a chance?
I said last week I didn't think they were making the playoffs, and I still don't. But I don't think they should be counted out. I just don't think they'll make it.
Yeah, I don't know if optimistic is the right word, but I'm not quite as down on them as some people. I don't think just because, well, first, there's no chance they'll win a wild card if they're going to win. If they're going to get in the playoffs, they're going to have to win the division. And the one thing that they have going for them, I think, is that the Lions have been playing a lot better than what they should have. I saw a stat earlier in the week. Somebody had tweeted out that the first the Lions are 7-4, and they've trailed in every game in the fourth quarter. So whatever winning percentage that turns out to be, that's like 60%. The rest of that's like way, way, way above everybody else in the league. And I think they gotta. I mean, they're gonna have to fall off sometime. So and that's who's in front of the Vikings. The Packers aren't really much of a threat, and the Vikings have a pretty soft schedule throughout the rest of the season. They play the Cowboys this Thursday. That's going to be a tough game, but after that, it's not all that rugged. So I'm not quite ready to wave the white flag yet, but it's not good, certainly.
Well, that was the question on the Lions. Are they clutch or are they lucky?
Yeah, I posted that on iFunny, and I don't know if there's a good answer. Some teams just have years like that. Maybe this is their year, but I don't know. The optimist in me hopes that it'll even out now. And the Raiders. Let's talk about your Raiders. What do you got on them? It seems like they're becoming more and more of a legit contender every week too.
Well, this week really, really worried me. They took a huge step back until the fourth quarter. They played probably the worst game I've seen them play this year, maybe besides the Chiefs game. And they showed up in the fourth quarter. That was really overshadowed by the controversial calls by the refs, but they did have a 70-some yard touchdown, a 30-some yard touchdown to Cooper. So I think the Raiders won the game, but I am worried with how they played to start.
Do you think they'll win the division?
I really can't say with how they played the last game. Before last game, I would have said yes, but
last game gave you doubts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on them because I haven't watched them play a whole lot this year, but I don't know. I think they certainly have a chance to win their division, but they certainly have weaknesses. Just like it seems like every other team in the NFL, it doesn't seem like there's one team separating themselves other than maybe the Cowboys. So I don't know. My gut tells me that they will win the division, but I don't know. And once they get to the playoffs, I don't know. It's so crazy in the playoffs, especially when you have a young team that hasn't had a whole lot of playoff experience like them. Anything can happen. So I don't know. Do you think they have a chance of knocking off the Patriots or any of these other teams to make a Super Bowl run?
I think Del Rio's a great coach, and I think that propels them a lot. But the lack of veteran leadership will probably get to them in the playoffs, like you said.
Yeah, I don't know. And I guess that leads us into the new segment that I call Brandon's Brainwashing. And in this segment, it'll be a little bit of a floating segment. Sometimes we'll have it in NFL, sometimes MLB, but or NBA, whatever. But this week, I would like to talk to you about people who rant and complain about the refereeing in any sport, not only just football. I'm going to use football specifically this week, but Also basketball and baseball. It really, really, really annoys me. And if you have something to add, Noah, just cut me off. I'll probably be pausing a little bit for emphasis. And what I'm going to use this week is the controversial, perhaps, Cardinals and Vikings game. For the people who maybe haven't heard or have been living under a rock, there was quite a few questionable calls that seemed to go the Vikings' way, some that didn't go the Vikings' way. Sorry about that. Manny is just posting funny comments, but where was I? Yeah, there were some controversial calls in the game, and it seems to me a lot of people just they don't take or they don't admit that their team is just not good enough, and they just simply say, "Oh, it was the refs," or injuries, and that really bugs me because I feel the refs become a little bit of a scapegoat when they really shouldn't be. But anyways, I'm going to break down 4 different calls in the Vikings Cardinals game where I don't think the refs were at fault when people kind of seem to blame them. The first one was a play in the first half on the Vikings. Cardinals were driving down the field and they were, I think they were at the 9-yard line, I believe. And Carson Palmer threw an interception to Xavier Rhodes that he brought all the way back for a touchdown. And on the play, even on the broadcast, they were complaining that it was such a horrendous missed call because there was contact between Xavier Rhodes and the receiver. I think it was Fitzgerald, but I'm not even 100% sure on that. But anyways, that doesn't really matter. They were complaining because there was contact between them after 5 yards, and they were beside themselves that the flag wouldn't have been thrown, which I understand. It was a penalty, but the ball was at the 9-yard line, and there was maybe contact at the 2-yard line. So that's 7 yards down the field. I mean, if I'm a ref, I'm not always going to know where 5 yards is. So I don't know. And I feel like there's a lot of them kind of plays where there's contact after 5 yards. So in my opinion, it wasn't that big of a missed call. And the thing that gets underrated on that, it was a horrible throw by Carson Palmer, and it's just a terrible decision. So Carson Palmer is as much to blame for that Xavier Rhodes interception and touchdown as the refs are. But of course, the refs always get all of the brunt of the criticism. And the second one was a play that happened in the second half that was very controversial. It was a play where the Vikings were running the Wildcat, which they've been running quite a bit this year because they have no running game. But anyways, in the Wildcat, Sam Bradford was lining up wide to the right, and Patrick Peterson absolutely annihilated him and pushed him back, and got called for unsportsmanlike conduct, I believe. And a lot of people were saying that was just a horrible call. But I did a little bit of research, and if I can get to this thing here, I found the rule that was called, and I found out that it was actually the correct call. Noah, if you have something to add, now would be the time while I look for this. If not, okay, I found it. Article 8 and it is listed under unnecessary roughness. Section E, it says unnecessarily running, diving into, cutting, or throwing the body against a player who is out of the play. And on that play, Sam Bradford was out of the play. It was a run to the opposite side of the field. And Patrick Peterson mauled Sam Bradford, which in a way I understand. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that rule, but it was the correct call. And some people didn't seem to think that it was a correct call, so they blamed the refs. When in reality, they were just following the rule book. And let me pause here for a second. It was also embarrassing to me that Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were complaining about that play and basically just ripping the refs up and down. I mean, that bugs me when they weren't right and they rip the refs, because I think that only fuels fans even more. So I don't know. But the third play I have was actually the next play on that drive where Bradford threw it to Stefon Diggs on the sideline. And as Diggs was fighting on the sideline, he was hit. And he was hit high, possibly in the helmet, and the refs threw a flag. And fans screamed. The broadcast ripped the refs once again because after showing the third different camera angle, slowing it down, they discovered that he actually didn't get hit with helmet-to-helmet contact, which is a big thing to me that a lot of people complain about. It's pretty easy for you to criticize the refs when you get 15 different camera angles and you can slow it down frame by frame. Like on that play, it was pretty 50-50 whether he hit him in the helmet or not, watching it live. So, I mean, that's how it is for the refs, too. They don't get the benefit of having all the different camera angles and be able to slow it down. It just bugs me. You may think it's an easy call after you see it the fifth different time, but the refs don't have that. So, I don't know. And the last one was actually a Vikings play where Everson Griffin sacked Carson Palmer. It was on a 4th down, and Everson Griffin basically tackled him hard onto the ground and got flagged for roughing the passer. I mean, he drove him into the ground is what happened. And he got flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct again, like I said. And people were ripping the refs for making that call, which, again, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that call. But that's been a point of emphasis for the refs. And I mean, think about all this stuff that's going on with Cam Newton, ripping the refs for not giving him the benefit of the doubt. But then when, somebody gets tackled hard and they're a little bit more cautious, you rip them for throwing the flag. So it's a little bit of a lose-lose situation. And they've been calling those plays all year. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it's fair to criticize them on that. And I think they're doing overall, I think the refs do a very good job. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Noah?
No matter what a ref does, they're going to be criticized because you got two teams. Obviously, the fan bases are going for their team, and if you call against them, they're not going to like your call. So it's inevitable for there to be controversies, no matter how good the refs are.
Yeah, and the one thing I was thinking about this a lot this week while trying to make my argument, and the one thing that I came up with is what is the standard for a good ref? Like, what do you want? Is it perfection? Do you want them to get every call right? Is that what makes a good ref? I mean, I think that's really unfair. I mean, I don't know how many calls.
I don't think it's possible to get every call right. I think you just need an unbiased ref. That's all. That's the perfect ref, is an unbiased ref.
Yeah, I agree with that as long as they call the game consistent. But they're going to make mistakes throughout the game. I mean, think about it. Noah, who do you think is the best NFL player right now? Who do you think, let's just take a quarterback. Who's the best quarterback in the NFL?
Well, I mean, you have to go with Brady, right?
Yeah, that's one that came to my mind. But there's probably going to be arguments. Who's the best? Maybe he's not the best, but let's just take Tom Brady as an example. All world, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He makes mistakes every single game, multiple 5-10, whether it's maybe not making a right decision, maybe missing his receiver by, a foot or two, not making a perfect pass, even if he gets bailed out. We don't rip him every time he makes a mistake. We say, oh, he's a great player. He limits his mistakes. So then why do, when refs get 90 out of 100 calls correct, we rip them when Tom Brady, one of the best football players ever, has the same success rate? I mean, it just makes no sense to me, where instead of blaming our players for making mistakes on things that they can control, we blame the refs every time we make a loss. And here's the thing, there are games, I think, every year where the refs have a impact on the game, but I think 2 or 3 games a year, maybe that's it. I know as we're recording this, Michigan-Ohio State game just got over, and there was a little bit of a controversial call there that I didn't watch the game, but it sounds like that could be one of them where the officiating did have a legit impact on the game, but there's only 2 or 3 of them games a year.
I watched that controversial call, and I really don't even think it's controversial. I think it's just Michigan fans complaining.
Yeah,
I really,
and that's the thing for me. Instead of maybe being two or three of those games a year, it's two or three of those games every single week where we got to blame the refs, and it's just it boggles my mind. I mean, I don't know. It just really bugs me.
the Raiders and Texans game last week, it was back-to-back calls on the third down and fourth down. They were both wrong. I'll admit that. But the refs don't play the game. The Texans did, after those bad calls, give up 2 touchdowns to the Raiders and didn't win the game. They had control beyond that. But I will say those 2
Yeah,
calls were horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are bad calls every game, and it's not to point those out and say, "Hey, that was a wrong call." But when the refs lost us that game, we were the better team. It's just 99% of the time, in my opinion, you're just not the better team, and the better team won.
The only time, maybe on like a last play, like I can't remember. I think it was Aaron Rodgers or the face mask call or whatever. I can't remember. When stuff like that happens, you might be able to blame it on the ref, but most of the time, your team does something that ultimately is their downfall.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's probably enough on my rant for the day. Let's move on to the prediction segment. And the first game I have on the list is Cardinals at Falcons. Who do you got?
The Falcons are 4-point favorites, and I think their superior offense will take it. They're actually the top offensive team in the NFL, and the Cardinals are the top defensive team in the NFL. But I think their offense is so good that I think they'll win.
See, I tend to lean a little bit more Cardinals with a little bit of an addendum, I guess you'd say. If they can play defense better than what they did against the Vikings, which they had all year. The Vikings actually moved the ball up and down on them quite a bit, but they've been typically pretty good, and I'm more of a defense wins games guy. So I think I'll pick the Cardinals on that one with a late field goal. I don't know. But the next game we have is Bengals and Ravens. Pretty big game for both of those. Who do you got?
The Ravens are 3.5-point favorites, and with the Bengals losing A.J. Green and Giovanni Bernard, I think the Ravens take it.
Yeah, I agree. I think those injuries were pretty big. And this last one is going to be a big game for you probably to watch or keep a tab on, and that's Chiefs at Broncos. I think that's either Sunday night or Monday night. I'd have to look that up. But what do you think?
Denver is 3.5-point favorites, and I'm pretty sure it's Sunday night. And I love this game because one of them has to lose. Well, I guess unless they tie, even better. I think I'm going to take the Broncos because I've been watching the Chiefs lately, and they're not playing great teams, and they're barely pulling them out. And last week they didn't pull it out. I'm just not high on the Chiefs right now.
See, that's the thing about me with the Chiefs. It seems like just when they're playing awful and you think they're not a good team, that's when they turn it on. Like they got just absolutely walloped by the Steelers, and then they went on a big run there at the for a few games there. But this is tough for me. I think I'm going to go Chiefs just because I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Broncos, but I think I'm just going to say Chiefs out of stubbornness. Any final thoughts before we end the podcast, Noah? Nope, that's it. Well, thanks for listening. We're planning on releasing an MLB podcast here sometime in the upcoming days. This should be released Sunday, so keep on the lookout for that. And thanks for listening, and have a good week.